Welcome back to the LearnXYZ channel. I think we all know plagiarism is a big deal, but today we're going to do a deep dive into some of the trickier aspects. I've always wondered, if I completely rephrase something, is it really plagiarism?
That's such a good question, and it kind of gets right at what makes plagiarism so tricky sometimes.
Yeah.
You know? Because it's not always black and white. Yeah, you're right. Just changing a few synonyms isn't enough. It's like you really have to get the original and then put in your own words.
So you're saying even if you've been creating content for a while, you might still need a little refresher on this stuff. What blows my mind is how plagiarism is changing with the whole digital age thing.
Yeah, it's like a total arms race, isn't it? You've got AI now that can spot plagiarism way better than we ever could. Those programs can analyze how your sentences are structured and even your writing style to see if there are any similarities that go way beyond just copying and pasting.
Oh, that's wild. Makes you think, can AI really get the meaning of text to catch those super sneaky plagiarism attempts?
It's getting there for sure. Some of these tools are using natural language processing, so they're not just looking for words that match, but they're trying to figure out what the text is really about and how it's all put together.
So what does that mean for people creating content? Are we all going to get caught for accidentally plagiarizing at some point?
Well, it definitely means we have to be even more original now, but that might not be a bad thing. It pushes us to get those creative juices flowing and come up with something truly new to share with the world.
I guess it makes you realize how important those plagiarism checkers are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with all the different types of plagiarism out there. I knew about directly copying stuff and even copying yourself, but mosaic plagiarism, mixing phrases from different sources. It's pretty sneaky.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's basically like making a patchwork quilt out of other people's work. And that's where Scribber's research is really interesting. They looked at 12 different plagiarism checkers to see how accurate they are.
Okay, so tell me what's the deal? Which one came out on top?
Well, not surprisingly, their own checker did the best. But the interesting part is that their study found Scribber's checker found 30% more instances of plagiarism than the average checker. And get this, it even caught stuff that was heavily paraphrased.
30% more.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. It really shows you can't just trust any random plagiarism checker. You need one that's up to date with all the latest tricks.
You got it. And it's not even just about avoiding getting caught. It's about doing the right thing. If you're just taking bits and pieces from others, you're not contributing anything new to the conversation.
That reminds me of something I saw on LearnXYZ's website about how search engines can punish you. Google doesn't just care about blatant copying, but they look for sites that aren't original and don't really help people.
Yeah, that's totally true. And it makes sense. Think about it from Google's point of view. They want to give people the best and most relevant information. So if your site's just repeating what everyone else is saying, it's not going to do well.
And for businesses, that can be a major problem, right?
Right.
Less people seeing their stuff, fewer leads, less money coming in. It's all connected.
Totally.
Oh.
But even beyond the business side of things, there's your reputation. Imagine building a brand and then people find out your content's basically stolen. That just kills people's trust.
You know what this conversation is making me realize? How much I still need to learn about plagiarism. It's way more complicated than I thought.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's why it's so important to teach people about it. We got to show students, content creators, everyone really, about all the details of plagiarism and how to avoid it. Not just the rules, but why those rules matter.
Speaking of learning, we are throwing a lot of info around. If you're digging this as much as I am, I definitely recommend checking out LearnXYZ's website, LearnXYZ-In. We've got tons of resources on creating content, avoiding plagiarism, and so much more.
It's like a gold mine of information for sure.
Right. Okay, so we've covered how AI is shaking things up, all the different ways plagiarism can sneak up on you, and why being original is good for both ethical and practical reasons. So where do we go from here? How do we go beyond just catching plagiarism and create a culture where everyone's excited about being original?
Now that's the big question. And it's definitely something we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive on plagiarism. Before the break, we were getting into how plagiarism can really hurt businesses and personal brands.
And it's not even just about losing website traffic or getting in trouble with Google. It's more like that gut punch you feel when someone you thought you could trust turns out to be passing off someone else's work as their own.
Yeah, it's a huge betrayal.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if you can believe anything they've ever said.
For sure. It makes you wonder if anything's truly original anymore.
That's why I think it's so important to really encourage people to be original. We need to move beyond just playing plagiarism police and actually help people find their own unique voices.
Yeah, I love that. But how do we make that happen? We're just bombarded with information constantly these days. How can anyone even filter through it all and come up with something truly new?
That's where critical thinking is crucial. It's not enough to just absorb everything you see. You got to analyze it, question it, and find those connections that nobody else has made. So it's not just about thinking of a totally new idea, but finding a new way to look at ideas that are already out there.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because when you start thinking that way, you realize that there's so much potential for originality everywhere.
You know, it's funny. I used to be so worried about accidentally plagiarizing in college. I would spend hours trying to rephrase things perfectly because I was terrified of Turnitin flagging me.
Oh, I think we've all been there. But you know what? That fear can actually be a good sign. It means you're taking plagiarism seriously and you want to do the right thing.
Yeah, but it can also be totally paralyzing, right? If you're constantly worried about messing up, you might not want to take any risks or share your own ideas.
Definitely. That's why we need to find that balance, encouraging originality without making people afraid to try. And I think part of that is teaching people how to do research the right way, paraphrase correctly, and cite their sources properly.
So it's all about giving people the tools they need to feel confident using information ethically and creatively.
Absolutely. Because once you have those skills, you can relax and focus on what really matters, expressing yourself authentically.
I love that. It's not just about avoiding plagiarism, but using information as a starting point for your own unique ideas.
Exactly. That's what content creation is all about. It's not about regurgitating information, but sharing your own take on it, adding something new to the conversation.
Okay, so we've talked about why originality is important.
Yeah.
But let's get practical here. What are some concrete things people can do to be more original in their work?
Well, first of all, I think it's super important to be really curious and take in as much information as you can, read a lot, explore different opinions, and expose yourself to new ideas. The more you learn, the more you'll have to draw from.
That's like filling up your creative tank.
Precisely. But you
Yeah.
can't just passively consume information. You need to really engage with it. Take notes, highlight important parts, ask yourself questions. What really speaks to you? What challenges your beliefs?
I was looking at some of LearnXYZ's tips on paraphrasing, and they had this great point about restructuring information. It's not just about swapping out words. It's about understanding the main idea and saying it in a totally new way, almost like translating it into your own language.
That's a great way to put it. And it shows how important it is to find your own voice. What makes your perspective different? What are your strengths as a writer or a speaker?
So it's about leaning into your own style and letting that come through in your work.
Exactly, because that's what makes your content stand out. It's not just about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it.
And that brings us back to practice, right? The more you write, the more you experiment, the better you'll get at expressing yourself in your own way.
It's just like any other skill. The more you use it, the better you become.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of plagiarism and originality.
Me too. It's a topic that's constantly evolving, which is what makes it so interesting.
Speaking of evolving, I'm curious about the role technology will play in all of this. We talked about AI for plagiarism detection, but could it also be used to help people be more original?
That's a really great question. And honestly, I think the answer is yes. There are already some cool tools out there that use AI to help writers come up with ideas, brainstorm new concepts, and even make their writing better.
Wow, so AI isn't just about catching plagiarists, it's about giving people the tools to be more creative.
You got it. AI can be a powerful tool for both sides. And as technology keeps getting better, I think we'll see even more ways to use it to encourage originality.
It's a really exciting time to be creating content.
For sure. And I think the biggest takeaway from all this is that we need to actively work on being original. It's not something you're just born with. It's a skill you can learn and improve over time.
And it all comes down to being curious and willing to explore new ideas and challenge your own way of thinking.
Exactly. With that mindset, the possibilities for originality are limitless.
Love it. And I think that's the perfect place to take a quick break.
Before we go, I want to remind everyone to head over to LearnXYZ's website, LearnXYZ-In. They've got a ton of great resources on content creation, plagiarism, and much more.
It's a fantastic resource. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all sorts of interesting topics. Welcome back to the LearnXYZ channel. We've been on this awesome journey talking about plagiarism and what it really means to be original these days.
It's been a really thought-provoking conversation. As we wrap up our deep dive, I think it's good to take a sec and realize just how much the whole landscape has changed.
Totally. We started by talking about AI and how it's changing the game when it comes to catching plagiarism. It's almost like these programs are like digital detectives sniffing out unoriginal stuff everywhere.
And that brought up some big ethical questions, right? Like, where's that line between getting inspired by something and just straight up copying it? How much borrowing is okay before it crosses the line?
It's definitely a gray area, and that's what makes this whole topic so interesting. It's not just about following the rules, but about getting why originality matters in the first place.
You know, something that's really hit me during our conversation is that plagiarism isn't only a problem for students or people who write for a living.
It affects everyone, doesn't it? Like, as people who read and watch and listen to stuff, we have to be smart about what we're consuming. We should be questioning where the information comes from and how original it really is.
Exactly. If we just accept everything we see without thinking about the source or whether it's original, we're basically helping plagiarism spread.
And that can lead to some pretty bad outcomes.
Yeah.
Think about all the misinformation online. A lot of that starts because people copy and paste stuff without checking if it's even true.
Yeah, it's like a big game of telephone where the message changes a little bit each time it's passed on, and then boom, suddenly you have all this fake news and made-up facts floating around.
That's kind of scary. But it just shows how important critical thinking is, something we've been talking about this whole time.
For sure. We need to teach people how to really evaluate information and how to spot those warning signs that something might be plagiarized or biased.
And that's not just about double-checking where the info comes from. It's about looking at the actual content. Does it seem original? Does it give you a new perspective? Or is it just repeating stuff everyone's already heard a million times?
Those are the key questions we should be asking ourselves, whether we're the ones making content or just consuming it.
You know, one thing I've been wondering about is what part technology will play in all this. We talked about AI being used to catch plagiarism, but could it also be used to help people come up with original ideas?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is absolutely yes. There are already tools that use AI to help writers brainstorm new ideas, come up with different concepts, and even make their writing smoother and more engaging.
So AI isn't just about policing plagiarism. It's about giving people tools to boost their creativity.
Exactly. AI can be a powerful tool for both sides. And as technology keeps advancing, I think we'll see even more creative and innovative ways to use it to encourage originality.
It's a really exciting time to be making content, that's for sure.
No doubt. And I think the main takeaway from all this is that being original is something we have to constantly work at. It's not like a talent you're born with. It's a skill, like playing an instrument or learning a new language that you can practice and get better at over time.
And it all begins with that curiosity, that desire to explore new things and question your own way of thinking.
You got it. When we approach creating content with that kind of mindset, there's really no limit to how original we can be.
I love that. I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up.
Before we go, I want to remind everyone to check out LearnXYZ's website, www.learnxyz.in. It's packed with tons of great resources on creating content, avoiding plagiarism, and all sorts of other cool stuff.
It's a fantastic website, seriously. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all kinds of fascinating topics.
Thanks for listening to the LearnXYZ channel.